Hey, this is Alex at the King's Tabletop Lounge, and today I wanted to do a discussion about the difference between D&D and Pathfinder. There are other videos out there that's talking about this issue, but they never really do a good job, so I'm tackling it myself. Okay, so talk about Pepsi and Coke. I've been looking at these two games for a while. I am a massive advocate of Pathfinder, and I'm starting to really appreciate D&D 5th edition. So let me tell you about the backstory of how I went from being an avid D&D fan to an avid Pathfinder fan, and kind of back into D&D somewhat. Okay, so back in 4th edition, well, I should go back even further. 3.5 edition was amazing. Everybody loved it. The artwork, I mean, you know, old school gamers that crack open the books and just see the old artwork. You go back in time, you love it, and it's what a lot of us grew up on. Well, D&D kind of got money hungry and decided, hey, we've sold a bunch of 3.5 books. Let's go ahead and get rid of it and come out with 4th edition and resell all the books and make more money. That's what a lot of game companies do, is they go, we need to make more money, and that makes sense. I love that. Make money. It's great. But they come out with a new edition, and they want to update the rules and all this other stuff. Well, the problem is that 3.5 was perfect. It was kind of like World of Warcraft vanilla back in when they first started. It was great. So imagine that D&D takes their open game license, moves out of the house and says, we don't want this stupid house anymore. We've been living here for years. We're moving into a new house called 4th edition. Well, Paizo came along and said, hey, are you guys literally just kind of leaving this old house abandoned, nobody to live in? And they said, yeah, it's a garbage house. Who wants it? And Pathfinder said, well, do you mind if we move into that house and do some amazing stuff with it? And they said, yeah, sure, it's a garbage house. Nobody wants it anymore. So Pathfinder came out, and then, boom. You can tell right off the bat what they added to it. They made it about 2.5, almost 3 times larger, and for good reason. They moved into the house. They did this whole Chip and Joanna Gaines fixer-upper. They left everything the same, but they beefed up the artwork. They made the rules much more seamless, and it's just a sexy book and an incredible game. And they even kept the old style. You can see from the insides of the book that the colors and the way that the pages are lined out are very similar, because they wanted people to know, hey, this is 3.5, but with some updates to it, so it's 3.75, Pathfinder calls it. Other people refer to it. Well, 4th edition came out, and it felt a little bit more like an MMORPG. So what that meant is that if you played 4th edition and you built a wizard, you were hitting the green flame belly button over and over again. It felt like you were holding a video game console, and in a lot of ways, I loved that about 4th edition. But it started to kind of get to a place where, you know, people felt like it was more restricted, and that's when Pathfinder really started to take off as a game. Because they started coming out with more rule books, they started coming out with bestiaries. They did brilliant things, like whenever they came out with a bestiary, which was their monster manual, they would come out with tokens for everything. Also, instead of coming out with more and more player information, they started coming out with stuff for dungeon masters, like these sexy item cards that you can get. I don't know how many of these boxes I've got, but I mean, you can see how many of these item cards I have. They're just fantastic because while they're playing the game, you can just pull them out, and they've got these handy-dandy note pockets on the back. So Pathfinder really started to take off, and it started to do really well because people weren't really happy with 4th edition. But there were a lot of people that still said, hey, D&D is awesome, 4th edition's incredible, and so they went after it. However, 4th edition made one of the stupidest moves since Coke changing its formula to New Coke. They dumped 4th edition and came out with Essentials, which was like in the middle of a really good game edition. I don't know if the company changed hands or what, but they decided, let's really dumb down this game and reprint and resell the books all over again. So books like Psionic Handbook 2 and all of these amazing books that a lot of us were sitting watering at the mouth for disappeared overnight. Boom! It's like when you're playing Eberron and the main city capital just disappears overnight and shatters. That's what happened to 4th edition, and all of a sudden it was Essentials. The problem was everybody hated Essentials. It was like D&D for 5th graders. It was garbage, and you can barely even find the books online anymore because it's an embarrassment. So then, just kind of like Coca-Cola, that was new Coke realized that they tasted a lot like Pepsi, said, oh, we're going to change our formula back to classic Coke. 5th edition came out and said, yeah, we're going to move back into being 3.5 with some updates. Well, here's the problem. Somebody else already did 3.5 with a couple of updates. So 5th edition is over here trying to pretend that it's not wanting to go back and get in a relationship with its old girlfriend, but it's too late. Pathfinder's amazing. It's incredible. People love it. But D&D decides, well, we have made some things simpler, so at least we'll have that advantage. But the problem with it is that the things that they dumb down suck, okay? Like, there's no reflex save. There's no will save. There's no fortitude. Those things are gone. Cross-classing is really difficult. Pathfinder, it's really easy. So why would you play 5th edition? Well, here's the thing. Pathfinder has a huge glaring issue with adventure paths. So these are kind of the things that you buy that are pre-written that help you play so that you don't have to constantly write your new material. Their adventure paths aren't that great. The storyline and the lore and the names aren't nearly as good as in D&D, and even I can admit that. Whereas D&D will have clear names like Redwood and Silverhaven and Eberron. Pathfinder stretches too hard into coming up with creative names like Cheliax and Alvalanthoria. Just really difficult to describe names that are just impossible to come up with on a map. And so it's really difficult to come up with good lore for Pathfinder. Where in D&D, whenever they write story manuals, oh my gosh, they're so good. So what I would say is that the other thing that you get is, yes, the players create a character sheet, the character sheets. Very, very, very easy. But the other thing is that these books are like $60 each. Some of them are $50. And when you go online, the digital copies are $30. For Pathfinder, the thing that will never change that makes them awesome is all of their PDF copies are $10. $10. I have bought so many of these books and have them across my tablets, have them across my computer, because you can buy the PDFs for $10. And it's amazing. The options that are in here are incredible. For instance, you can come up with any of the D&D books and never get as seriously awesome as the Ultimate Equipment Guide. Plus, you see how small this book is? Pathfinder also started shrinking down their books from the hardcovers, like this, down to these convenient soft covers that are much smaller, that are full of really, really great items. You can get a player's handbook for $25. That's a soft cover that's this big, and it's still completely legible and able to fit into your back pocket. Also, the content that they created for Pathfinder is amazing, because even today, when people are playing D&D and they have some gold to spend, they secretly want to slide into the Pathfinder Ultimate Equipment Guide because it's got better weapons and better stuff. Whenever you're wanting to look for monsters for D&D, they've got like one monster manual out for 5th edition now. They have 6 bestiaries out for Pathfinder. 6 full-size books with monsters from all different ranges. And it's really easy to accommodate changing those things over to 5th edition. So here's my easy explanation for whether you should play Pathfinder or D&D 5th edition. You should do both. You should highly, highly, highly recommend that you mix the two games together. That you pull them out and you smush them together and you make them kiss. And here's why. Pathfinder has some really great lore, really great storylines, and the character sheet is really simple. However, Pathfinder has a lot of complexity and a lot of option that just take the game to a new level. The upside of the simplicity is that it's too simple. You go to Pathfinder and you could be like, hey, or you go to D&D, it's too simple, and you go, hey, D&D, I would like the color green. And it says, would you like yellow or blue? And you're like, it's really simple. I just want the color green. And it's like, would you like yellow or blue? There's no way to get green out of this. There's a lot missing, and so sometimes you're left stuck trying to go, I don't really know what my reflex save is. I guess I use dexterity or whatever. But they did come up with great options, like things like in combat advantage and disadvantage. Fantastic. The problem with Pathfinder is, even though it has a lot of options and a lot of complexity to it, sometimes you can't get the color green. Also, you go to it and you're like, hey, Pathfinder, I'd like to color green. And it's like, Fantastic. Would you like pea green, lime green, evergreen? And you're like, no, just regular green. And it's like forest green, metallic green. It gives you like 50 options of green, and you're like, I just want simple. So I tend to merge the two games together as a dungeon master because while I love the simplicity of the character sheet for D&D, I also can't get past the fact that I love all of the material that they've come out with Dungeon Masters. The maps for Pathfinder, the foldable maps are incredible. The tiles that they've come out with are incredible. Oh, the tokens alone. You can get these token sets where, here's an amazing thing. I used to buy monster manuals for D&D, and then I would go and I would buy these boxes because they started coming out with little minis for D&D that were pre-painted in a box, but they treated them like booster packs, like Magic the Gathering. You had to spend $20, you got 5 figures, you never knew what you were going to get, or maybe they were like $15 for 5 figures, you didn't know what you were going to get, and so you ended up being stuck with like 20 copies of a cockatrice, and you're just trying to get that one gelatinous cube to run in your campaign, and you're having to get all of these figures, and you never get a gelatinous cube, and you finally give in and go on eBay and spend $75 for one. Well, the cool thing about Pathfinder is that every time that they come out with a bestiary or any of their campaigns, they come out with a tile pack of tokens, which are these little Candyland-looking tokens that have pictures on them. And so if I'm wanting to get the bestiary box, I can get the bestiary book and the bestiary box of tokens, and the entire box has every token, a picture of every animal, and even doubles and quadruplets of anything that's in that bestiary, which means whenever I'm running a campaign and I'm using little tokens, I have a representation of every single one, and I'm not having to fish for it. The other thing that Pathfinder is killing the market in is a game called Starfinder. This is set in the future. It's an amazing game. I'm going to do a different series on it. But right when D&D came out with 5th edition and people were like, oh no, I wonder if Pathfinder is going to be able to keep up, Pathfinder was genius in announcing a 2nd edition for Pathfinder, which is all of the same stuff as Pathfinder 1st edition, but with some tweaks to the combat system that's a little rough. And then there's Starfinder, which is amazing because people are used to an idea in D&D called Spelljammer from 1,000,000 years ago, where basically you were wizards and spaceships, and it wasn't that good. Starfinder brings everything from magic to space combat and aliens and technology. It's all of your favorite things from role-playing games like Bubblegum Crisis and Cyberpunk and other things like that, mixed with magic. So basically, you're going in as an operative, sneaking into a ship, trying to hack their computer, and if you fail, you get locked out by their firewall. And then their firewall summons a fire demon from the abyssal plane, right? So you've actually got magic involved in it. You've got technomancers. You've got all of this other stuff like that. So when you're looking at the 2 editions, I would suggest merging Pathfinder with 5th edition. However, my preference will always lean towards Pathfinder because I love the options. I love that there are no handcuffs. And even though there's a few more options, it's a little bit more complex. If you're willing to do the work, it's a great game, and they're constantly coming out with new, amazing material for it. Especially as a dungeon master, I never get bored running this. However, I have merged the 2. I let my players pull options from either, and then I do a little bit of work trying to figure out how to mesh them together. But because 5th edition is so much like 3.5 and so very much unlike 4th edition, it really is easy to mush the 2 together and make them have an awesome little RPG, baby. So that's my recommendation for now, and let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, and talk to you guys later.